Hey guys, it's Shannon and John from That DIY Couple. You may not know this about us, but we actually invest in real estate on the side. It's actually become my full-time job. And today we're going to tell you about how we got started and how we acquired 21 different rental units over the past 4 years.
So the very first property that we bought, we did something called house hacking. House hacking is when you buy a house that has more than one apartment in it and you live in one apartment and rent the other ones out.
In major cities, and particularly in the Northeast, it's very common for homes to be multifamily homes. So that means that there are 2 or 3, or like Shannon said, even 4 units all together in one home. It might look from the outside like it's just a normal home, but there are actually multiple apartments in the same home.
So when you house hack, you live in one unit of this multifamily home, and then you have tenants in the other units, and you receive rent from those tenants. And that rent helps you offset or even live for free by offsetting the carrying costs of your property.
So carrying cost means your mortgage, your taxes, your insurance, and then any upkeep that you have to do on a monthly basis to own the property. One of the biggest advantages in house hacking is that you can take advantage of special loan programs offered by banks where you can put a very small percent down of the property and still own the entire property. So it's a way to get involved in real estate investing without actually having to have a lot of cash up front to get started.
And let's take a step back and just note that in the US, you typically buy a house using financing, which means that you don't buy the overall purchase price of the house unless you happen to have a lot of cash. You usually put a little bit of money down, and then the bank gives you a loan, which is called your mortgage, which you pay every month over the course of usually 30 years. And then at the end of that time, you've paid back the bank, you've paid them some interest, which is how they make money, and then you own the house without any debt on it. You own the house from the beginning, but you have debt on the house when you have a mortgage. So all around the US, home prices vary dramatically. You might be able to get a really nice house for $80,000 in one part of the US that would cost $200,000 in another part of the US, or $500,000 in another part. But however you buy your house, you're generally, especially for your first house, going to use bank financing and get a mortgage. So how much you put down is going to be a lot less than the overall purchase price of the home.
So we took advantage of these special loan programs for primary resident occupants when we bought our first place. Our story is that in 2013 we were living in Manhattan, which is the most expensive city in the US. We were paying almost $2,000 a month to rent a 1-bedroom in a 2-bedroom apartment on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. And I know that that sounds like a crazy amount of money, but for Manhattan it was actually a pretty good deal. But despite that, we just got tired of paying that much money for what was really a very, very, very small space. We decided to start looking at places in the greater New York City area, and we settled on New Jersey. We found, this is 2013, early 2014, we found a 2-family home that was listed in New Jersey for $230,000, which again sounds like a lot of money, but it's 15 or 20 minutes away from Midtown Manhattan, and like I said, it's a 2-family home.
And comparatively, it's really hard to even buy like a small apartment in Manhattan for that amount of money.
Yeah, it'd be $600,000, $700,000.
Right.
So we had searched for a long time. We found this home listed. It was the dead of winter. This is the beginning of 2014. We went out and saw it. It was a bank-owned property, which means that the bank had foreclosed on the property and then took it back as the bank's property. So the bank owned it. The power was off, there was no heating, there was probably like 2 feet of snow in front of the house when we saw it. But we walked in, we absolutely fell in love, and we used that loan program to put 3.5% down on the property. So it was listed for $230,000. We offered $200,000 on it just because it was in not great condition. And
it had sat on the market for a very long time when we bought it.
And we used a particular loan program called an FHA loan. An FHA loan is a loan offered by a traditional bank, but in a way insured or secured by the federal government, actually the Federal Housing Authority, FHA. The FHA loan program allows you to put as little as 3.5% down on a property, and also has very relaxed credit standards. So I think the minimum credit score to get an FHA loan is maybe 600 or maybe even lower. And you can get an FHA loan on a multifamily property, which is what we did. So we had put in an offer at $200,000. It got accepted at $200,000, and we put 3.5% of that $200,000 down, which is $7,000. So for $7,000, we were able to essentially acquire a property. We also had to pay closing costs and things like that, but we were able to acquire our own property, pay monthly mortgage, obviously, to the bank, and taxes and insurance and etc. But we had the advantage of, as we said before, house hacking, which is living in one unit and renting out another unit.
So let's break it down. We saved up $7,000 by scrimping and saving and bringing our lunch and walking to work as much as we can and just being frugal. And then we saved up enough for closing costs, which were how much?
Probably about $8,000.
And then we also had to do some initial repairs to the property. So we got a really good deal on this property because it was in bad condition and we were willing to do some work. So we spent about $25,000 to repair the electric, to replace the roof, to do some sort of minor but necessary renovations on the kitchens, and then we were in the property. So that's a lot of money, but we were able to house hack to offset the cost of our mortgage each month. And for the money that the big ticket item, which was the $25,000 that we put into the house, because half of the house we were using as an investment where we had renters, we were able to get a big advantage at tax time because that loss offset some of our rental income.
The only disadvantage of using an FHA mortgage is that you have to pay what's called PMI, or private mortgage insurance. Private mortgage insurance is like an additional monthly cost that you pay every month, and it's essentially because you haven't put down at least 20% in the property. So one advantage of using an FHA is that you can put very little down, you can have a very low credit score, and you also get a preferred interest rate, but the difference is that you have to pay private mortgage insurance. You can remove private mortgage insurance from your FHA loan at some later point, but I think for the advantage of being able to acquire a home with 3.5% down, paying PMI, private mortgage insurance, is really not a big deal. And we ended up paying it for a few years until we refinanced out, which is the subject of a later video. So to break it down and use our real numbers, we paid, the purchase price of the house was $200,000. We put 3.5% down, that's $7,000. So we got a mortgage for $193,000 at the interest rate that we got, which at the time was really great because interest rates were very low. And with PMI, we were paying about $949 per month. That's principal, interest, and PMI. We paid $807 a month in taxes. Taxes in New Jersey are extremely high. So we were paying almost the same amount in taxes as we were in principal and interest and PMI. We paid about $100 a month in insurance because it's a $1,200 a year policy. And then we paid about $200 a month just in maintenance. So things like repairs, utilities, etc., etc. All in, we calculated that we were paying about $2,056 to own this house, and that compares to a little under $2,000 in Manhattan to rent a very, very small bedroom in a very small two-bedroom apartment on the Upper East Side of Manhattan.
In a place that we didn't own.
In a place that we didn't own.
By comparison, we were living in a very spacious two-family home. We were living in one bedroom and had two other bedrooms free. We had a big basement, a big backyard, and a parking spot, and a whole other floor above us, which we were able to rent out through house hacking.
So we initially rented out our second floor. We lived in the first floor. We rented out the second floor to a friend of mine who I was working with in a startup at the time. We gave him a really great deal. I think we were charging him $800 a month. So
which was a lot below market, but we were doing it because he was our friend and we were investing in the startup that they were working on together.
Right, so we were essentially paying about $1,200 a month to own this house and have my friend live on the second floor above me. So one of the biggest advantages of owning a home, particularly in the US, is that you can deduct from your taxes certain things that come with home ownership. So as we mentioned before, because we did repairs to the property and because we were using it as an investment, we were able to use some of those expenses to offset the taxes that we would pay on rental income. But we were also able to deduct the interest from the mortgage against our normal income taxes. That's one of the huge advantages of home ownership in the US, is that the interest on your mortgage of your primary residence is deductible against your income. So not only were we not paying the city tax in New York City anymore, and also paying slightly less New Jersey state income taxes, we also got a bunch of tax deductions and things that we could essentially use to offset our normal income. So it's hard exactly to calculate what the advantages would be for your scenario, because it depends on your income and where you live. But
if you want to comment below and you have questions, we'll be happy to help you try to think through.
Yeah, and home ownership, particularly for your primary residency, carries really nice tax advantages. They were somewhat reduced under the current tax plan, but for most people it's probably still going to carry significant tax advantages just by owning a home.
So to recap, we've been living in Manhattan. We were paying $2,000 a month to live in a really small place with a roommate. We moved to New Jersey into a home that we owned for a carrying cost monthly of $1,200 a month, with a much larger and more luxurious space.
So what we did after that is got a little bit more creative. I mean, I think that alone is a great win, to own your own place, to cut the amount of money that you pay every month almost in half, to live in a larger place. That's a fair investment right there. But what we did is, this is 2014 when we first bought our place. Airbnb was just becoming very popular, particularly in the greater New York City area. People wanted to come to New York on vacation and didn't want to spend $300-400 a night to stay in Manhattan. So we started renting out individual bedrooms of our house on Airbnb, first just as an experiment because we had used Airbnb as tourists, but it became something that we started to do throughout our entire house. We started with 1 bedroom, then 2 bedrooms, then 3 bedrooms, and ultimately we moved to the basement of our house and rented out the whole house on Airbnb, mostly to people that wanted to go on vacation in New York. We were making about $1,000 a month per room on Airbnb. So we were renting, at our sort of maximum, we were renting out 5 different rooms in our house, making about $5,000 a month in revenue from Airbnb. Our carrying costs, like we said before, were about a little over $2,000 a month just in principal and interest and taxes. We had some more carrying costs with Airbnb because we had to clean it and do things like that. But overall, we were netting somewhere in the vicinity of $2,500 a month, as in we were making that into our pockets just by living in our basement and renting out the rest of the home. So within about a 6-month period of time, we went from spending $2,000 a month to live in Manhattan to making in our pocket $3,000 a month and living totally for free, essentially, in our own home. So that decision and what we did really set us up to continue making good financial decisions and also to invest more, because basically overnight we had $5,000 more in our pocket every month.
Right, and so you might ask why we did this. Why did we move down to our basement, which was not a nice place to live.
It was a partially finished basement, so that means that there was no bathroom, there was no kitchen, there was flooring, and there was kind of like an area where we could sleep and where we could work, but by no means was it comfortable, and certainly was not as nice as living in like Manhattan, for example. So
you might ask why two Ivy League educated lawyers would do something like this, and the answer is student loans. So I have like a fairly large sum of student loans from attending. I mean, I had the privilege to attend really good schools for college and for law school, but we really wanted to be able to have a stream of passive income eventually in order to be able to pay those down and to set ourselves up so that we wouldn't be at a huge disadvantage and never be able to retire and things like that. So we were looking to hustle as hard as we could when we were just starting out in order to, you know, overcome some of the challenges that our generation faces, which is having a higher cost of going to school combined with, you know, a more difficult economy that our parents faced. So our philosophy, we read a bunch of books on personal finance, which we can talk about in other videos, but our philosophy was to just live very frugally, very simply, and to just invest as much as we could in order to have more income to be able to grow our money and save, and eventually be able to make a really large payment on the student loans to pay them off completely.
A second concern was that although we love our jobs and loved our jobs at that time too, we wanted to figure out a way for us to have continual passive income in the future without having to be forced to work. So essentially we wanted to have financial freedom. And we can talk about this also in another video, but we thought that real estate investing would be a great foray into that for us, and it certainly has been. And I think that's what the power of real estate investing can be to you if you're interested in getting started. Essentially, you can have an asset, which is a property that makes money for you. You do have to manage it, you do have to worry about it and work on it, but it's not a full-time job, and you can essentially scale your real estate holdings, which is what we did, and we'll talk about in this video series about how we did it. You can actually scale your real estate holdings to have multiple homes and multiple properties, which is what we did, and at some point replace your full-time job with managing your real estate investments. That's what I did about 1.5 years ago, and I love it. And I'll talk more about how I managed to do that in my own life in future videos. But to summarize kind of what we did, you might not be able to find a deal like we did in your own area. We found a great property. We were looking at the right time, which is kind of the low tide of the real estate market in 2013, 2014. You may not be able to find a property that exactly meets all this criteria, where you're able to house hack and make money and do, you know, kind of the perfect deal. But the reality is that we didn't know anything about real estate when we started investing. We didn't look at thousands of different homes to evaluate their sort of financial success or lack of success. We just really dived in because we wanted to buy our own place and wanted to experiment. And because we were able to put so little money down relative to what we were paying in Manhattan, we really weren't taking what we thought was a huge risk in doing it. And sometimes when people get started in real estate, they get sucked into this analysis paralysis sort of mindset where they have to analyze everything and think about everything before they buy a property. As a first step, I would super encourage house hacking, buying a place that you're going to live in and renting out another part of the place as a way just to get involved, just to learn, and just to have your own place. It's awesome. Not a lot of people of our generation and younger are doing that. So
and I wouldn't count on Airbnb. I would look at the house with the most conservative analysis of just having a regular tenant in there, paying a regular amount of rent for your area, and then even look at it, you know, 10% lower. Give yourself some really conservative parameters. Assume that it's going to be vacant for 1 month out of the year, and then consider, does that still make sense, and is that still a better option for you than paying rent?
I think that's a great point. We analyze all of our deals as though we weren't using Airbnb or anything special like that. In future videos, we're going to go a little bit more in depth about some of the numbers, how to analyze a property, how we acquired more properties than just our first property. But we just wanted to share our story with you and hopefully inspire you and get you thinking about buying a property if you're considering that, house hacking if you're considering that. We would both love to hear any questions, comments, thoughts, observations, experiences that you've had in investing that we could respond to. We absolutely love that. I love talking about real estate investing. It's not only my full-time job, but it's like my passion in life to do. So we're going to be making some more videos about our process. Please feel free to ask questions and reach out, and best of luck in your real estate investing.
Guys, if you like this video, please hit subscribe and give us a thumbs up, share with your friends, and send it along to anyone who you think might enjoy it. Thanks so much for watching.